Good morning, and good morning to everyone who is joining us today. This is our third We Edu breakfast, and today we're going to be having a look at the topic of culture and retention. As always, I hope you guys have got your favorite breakfast ready. My name is Linda Parsons, and I tweet under the name of Digilin, and I have with me Victoria. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Victoria James, and I am very excited to be able to say that we have with us Fiona for the do-over of our We Edu breakfast. Fiona Cottam is principal of Heartland International School. She can tell a fantastic story about her time in Dubai at some incredibly prestigious schools here, and also about the way that she creates an environment for retention and a brilliant school culture that helps staff stay and that brings her staff closer together. So without any further ado, I will bring Fiona into the conversation.
And backstage today we have Philippa, and we also have Shazia, and they're controlling our social media. So anyone who is with us on YouTube right now, then please ask us any questions, and Philippa will be there and Shazia will be there to pick them up and pass them on to Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Good morning.
Oh, we're on.
Right, one more time. Good morning, Fiona.
I said good morning, and it's good to actually be here. I'm glad you unmuted me, but at least the goblins are laid to rest of the last time. I'm in school and it's a lot safer. So yeah, it's a good place to be.
So we'll get started straight away. So we wanted to talk a lot about what creates an environment where staff feel valued and where staff want to stay in schools. Tell us about some of the essential elements of a school culture that you think encourage staff to stay in the school.
I mean, I think the most important fundamental to start with is that we always think of schools as being places for children, happy places where children are successful and they succeed. The bit that we sometimes forget is that schools are actually just about people, full stop. Schools are human capital. And the really integral part of that is that if you look around your staff room, not only have you got your most expensive resource, budget-wise, you have your most important resource. It's impossible to run that FS1 class when a teacher is ill for a day. Suddenly it's all hands on deck. So we're not that teachers are irreplaceable, but there's such an important fundamental cog of the wheel in terms of the day-to-day operations and running of the school that I think sometimes you can forget that. Sometimes we can just make assumptions that everything will happen and everything will go ahead and that the people will turn up just because the school exists. So I think it's really important to create an environment that genuinely is about family. And that's one of the mantras that I think many people in our school try to live by. Family really genuinely do care about each other. We sometimes have rows and we don't always agree, but we'll pick up the pieces the next day and we'll figure out a way forward because fundamentally we care about each other. So I think once you create a community and a school that's absolutely has the parameters being driven by standards, attainment and progress for children, etc., but also have the mantra that this is a community and a family where we care about each other as the adults in that delivery of what we do, whether that is from the caretaking staff to the admin staff to the teaching staff. And while some parts of the family will be closer than others, creating that sense of community where it's okay to both say what you want to say, as long as we're respectful towards each other, but also to not be okay. As long as we have that type of community, then I think people tend to stay. Why do people leave? People leave because there are greater opportunities, particularly promotion. Or people leave, certainly what I'm seeing this year is people are leaving to go home. But I think once you're part of a family, once you feel good in that family and you're looked after, there are many, many schools across Dubai whose retention rates are extraordinary, and it's because people are happy and people are happy at work.
It's so important. I mean, because it's a big theme, like in the last couple of years, like the whole, like people are really, really missing home. They're actually feeling like, very much like, we are expats, we're guests in this country, in this wonderful country. However, we can't, the majority of the UK way, like it's really difficult. So therefore, it's like constantly playing on your mind. But you kind of, you talk a lot about like schools around the UAE, and like I'm so curious as to like what your backstory is and like how you're like where you're getting these experiences from. So could you talk to us a little bit about like because at the moment you're at Heartland,
Yes.
a lovely school at A level and a developing school. It's an expanding school, right? Would you be able to talk to us a little bit about you, like, and where you're getting your experience from?
Well, Heartland isn't yet outstanding. Let's do that. We think we are, but we're not, according to the stamp on the door, as it were. We're a very good school.
An outstanding ethic, I guess.
And we're in our 6th year of operation. I mean, for me, background-wise, like many people, you fall into teaching. It's not necessarily what you think you're going to do when you go to university. Me, I wanted to be in a rock band. That's all I really wanted to do. I wanted to tour the world. I wanted a bunch of roadies behind me, and I wanted to be gigging on stage every night. That's all I ever wanted. That didn't quite happen. I did a music degree, okay? And although I was a music and English degree, but although I was sort of classical music, we sort of picked up part-time work at, in a jazz band and sort of performing around the place. But anyway, that's another life.
What's your instrument of choice then?
Pardon?
What was your main instrument?
Piano and voice. Piano and voice are sort of main two instruments. Really.
Come on, what was the name of your band before we move on?
Oh no, it wasn't that. We were just gigging. We were just university students gigging together. Really, that's all we did. And then you did lots of other things, and you played in pubs and clubs, and we did that sort of on the local scene in Ireland, really. And that was it, just around where we lived. So it was nothing big. U2 had sort of just hit the heights at the time, and I think I sort of emulated myself to be Larry Mullins on stage, really, and that was all that mattered, but it didn't happen. So like lots of people, fell into teaching, taught for 3 years, and then actually left teaching and pursued another career for 4 years, which was interesting because it was a complete contrast. So I joined the police and did that for 4 years, but then came back into teaching, and there were lots of reasons for that. Maybe culture had a big part to play in the decision. But the bigger part was, at the time, actually, my father was ill. And I found that with 20 days leave a year, which is all you had in the police at the time, it just didn't give me the flexibility to go home from the UK to Ireland, because I was teaching in the UK and I was in the police in the UK. So I sort of needed that flexibility with those fixed types of holidays. So it was a very selfish choice to return into teaching. And then ended up in the most incredible school, but one of the toughest schools that you can imagine. 1,850 boys in a high school in a selective part of the country, where I guess in some ways people are almost made to feel like failures because they failed the 11 plus. So you have that whole culture of trying to tell people, that they're not failures, but they really can be a success. And it ended up being, it was an incredible school. Full of amazing young people, and sort of went from there to different jobs, still in tough schools, and then got my first headship in the UK. And after sort of 4 years there, found myself coming to Dubai to work for GEMS Education at the time, and found myself walking in the doors of Jumeirah College. And really, that was 12 years ago. And Dubai, like for many people, has become home. It's become the place where our son grew up, where he did all of his schooling. And my husband teaches as well in the city. So it's just become somewhere that's intrinsic to everything that we do in our lives, really. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Do you find that, like, in the last 12 years, schools have changed, like, or do you think schools have kind of kept their kind of like theme book, like, advanced? I probably said that really badly, but
I think it's a difficult one, and this isn't a criticism of any school, but I do think that the business element of the city has perhaps become more challenging for school operators. The increase in the number of schools, the continual growth the whole time, has meant that you're having to think more business-like on occasion in terms of driving enrollments. And to be honest, I think that that's where schools end up failing. The more business you think, you can be a business, but the more business that you think in terms of, that profit and loss, or the EBITDA, or whatever it might be, I think you lose sight of what schools are about. And I'm just very lucky working at this school, certainly, that the owners, whilst the business element is incredibly important, when it comes to the educational piece and how we run and operate the school, they have complete trust and faith in the team of people that work here, and have given us the autonomy to drive ahead and to make decisions. Now, that doesn't always happen. That partnership isn't always as positive for some people. So they may have different challenges in operating their schools. I'm just incredibly lucky with our owners that they have that mantra, that their children are at the school themselves. So they're very much focused on, yes, driving standards, but also creating opportunities and creating culture. So I think together, it is about the values that underpin the school. It's about the values that you hold dear as a person. And as long as you've got the freedom to integrate who you are and what matters to you in education in your school as a leader, I think you can create that environment. You don't have to lose anything, even whilst you're running a business in a pretty cutthroat world.
Yes. I think especially now, you talked a little bit about, teachers moving back to their home countries, but of course that applies to every industry, especially in the UAE at the moment with COVID hitting, with the jobs market being, picking up now, but, hitting rock bottom last year, is that there was a mass exodus, which means the student, can't imagine how competitive it is at the moment with the student population shrinking in this country as well. So you talked a little bit, Paul, that your school is expanding. So you are, and I'd say one of the fortunate ones, but actually it sounds through its kind of grit and integrity that's got you to the point where you are able to expand your school, whereas others aren't so fortunate. So tell us a bit specifically about Heartland and kind of the initiatives that you've put in place at Heartland, whether that's around retention, or whether that is around how you've kept your student body growing, how you've got that growth.
It's interesting. I would say that I'm just coming up to the end of my 5th year here, and this is the 6th year of the school operating. And I think about 3 years ago, we very much had a strategic plan that you would say to somebody that you worked at Heartland, and they would say, sorry, where's that? Who's that? And I think when we had sort of fixed the jigsaw pieces of making sure the school had the right standards, and we'd gone through that first KHDA inspection and had got a good on first inspection, we realised that people didn't know who we were, and people didn't know where we were, and people used the term Heartland and they said, what's that, as opposed to even, who is that? Yeah. So we knew that we had to somehow put ourselves on a different type of platform. So we were very conscious in terms of talking about ourselves, sharing our stories, whether that is through, I've got some incredible people, my head of English, Emma, my head of PE, who also sits on the leadership team, Neil, writing for Tess, being vocal in terms of putting ourselves forward in terms of conferences, etc. My head of foundation stage, Amina, who leads the BSME platform on early years. What we had to try and do was to reach out a little bit more to spread our story. And once we started to spread our story, more people listened, I think. And when they listened, what they found was an honesty and an integrity of our message. So what we said we had on the box, when they came to see, they found we actually did have on the box. And that isn't always the case, because marketing can blur the lines between the real and the imaginary and what you might want to have. So for us, it was about that honesty and integrity. This is who we are. We believe that we are a great community because we work together as a team. And that's our mantra in terms of every person who joins our community. Everybody's important and everybody does matter. Every staff member, every child and every family. So building that community was actually the thing, I think, that allowed us to grow. And reputationally, as a result of that, we've continued to grow. And we feel stronger today than we ever have been before. We're confident in our skin about who we are. We don't have to pretend to be something we're not. We know that from time to time, like everybody, we may make mistakes. But I think the integrity of who we are and our messaging has become one of our most important values.
I think that's really important, because like coming from a teacher's point of view, like the idea that a whole school, you can kind of represent that, and you can bring something meaningful to like that school community to help like everyone grow is really powerful, and it's something that makes you feel like a really valued, like, you know, not just team member, but it does make you feel like a really valued family member as well. Like, and doing that with integrity, like, so you're not just doing it for like a box ticking exercise, or like, you know, you're not just doing it to, you know, for your own selfish reasons. That is really important. Like, so I guess I think you've answered my second question to you, which was going to be like, how do you balance multiple voices and voices at school? Because, you know, like we are all in international schools or working in the international school sector, and there are many different nationalities and many different kind of perspectives, I guess, and the old and the new, like, you know, faces of Dubai as well, like, and that's an extraordinarily complex thing to kind of like, you know, say like at the beginning of a school year, kind of this is who we are, and like, you know, we're going to make you feel valued, and these are the things that we're going to do. Like with you, I did a poll about this actually a couple of days ago, and I said like, well, you know, inset week is incredibly hectic, but it's the first perception for many of like, you know, welcome back to the school, or like, you know, this is where actually, of the choices I gave people, whether it's continuing CPD from departments, or whether it's like going out and like having socials, or whether it's like heritage sites and stuff, it was all really even on like, you know, like what do people like to see like in the inset week. So like, I guess my question to you now is, and like, how do you balance that? Like, you know, what's
well, I mean, I didn't answer your survey deliberately because there wasn't an option to say all three of the above. Because I think you had staff socials, you had team building internally, and you had what was the third one you had?
Staff socials.
You had staff socials, you had PD driven internally by people, and then you had team building. That was the three. And I just thought, you know, all three are absolutely crucial, and they're really important parts, because what you find out about people when you're being sociable, it's the human spirit part, isn't it? It's the human story. It's the fact that I've got mum and dad or gran and granddad at home, and I'm worried about them if I'm a young teacher. You know, I've got sisters and brothers, and we're dotted around the world. This is what I'm anxious about, and this is what I love. So the human story becomes that connectivity is crucial. So the social aspect is important. Certainly for us as a through school, the team building part is integral, because otherwise we'll end up in pockets around the school and never the twain shall meet. And we're absolutely passionate about making sure that the whole throughness of the school stays strong. And the final bit in terms of, you know, the PD, I think it's very, very powerful if we support each other, you know, peer to peer, team to team, how people operate together as a community. For an example, one of the things we just started 2 weeks ago, because we're very close to Maidan, and because I'm a pretend golfer, which I'm about to disappear and do after I finish this today. One of the things that is on our doorstep is the Maidan Golf Club. And I know sort of two of the coaches there, Ben and Ian, quite well. We happened to have a chat, and I said, I might try and get together a staff group socially. Let's see how we do. I've got 12 people signed up out of 84. So we play on a Tuesday after school. We've got half of us are complete beginners. The rest of us are like me and have been playing for a while but have picked up bad habits. And then we sit down and have a sprite together afterwards. But in that group, you know, I've got an FS1 teacher, I've got a year 2 teacher, year 6, I've got the admin secretary, I've got the school principal, I've got the assistant principal of secondary, I've got the head of EAL. I've got a group of people who necessarily wouldn't otherwise socialise together and mix. And it's just good fun, you know, it's great fun because it gets us out of school, and we get to leave early on a Tuesday. We can leave at 4 o'clock, it's great.
The thing is, it's so important. Like, I know, like, you know, talking to my friends and stuff, and like, you know, with my previous schools, and they did various things very, very well when it came to team building, which is why I chose to stay in, like, you know, in the Middle East and teaching. But there's also that idea of like the director or the principal actually, like, you know, socializing like with everyone, and like, you know, having that open, like, from FS to year 13. That's a really difficult thing to do, like in schools, and like that's like such a I guess like from time-wise, like you've invested a small amount of time, but like the social aspect you get from that must be absolutely massive. Like you can, it's priceless, and it's
But let's be honest, the really important thing as a school principal to remember is that you organise a staff social. It starts at 8 o'clock at night. You need to go by 11 o'clock, okay, so that they can let their hair down when you're not there.
Yes, okay, fair enough. Yeah, so I guess so we have like a load of shout outs actually today. So good morning to Osma. He's saying good morning to us, and I'd love to know like where you're commenting in from. And also Neil, like you're Neil in the leadership team, has also said good morning. He's a long-standing friend of ours of We Edu, and has told us many wonderful things about Heartlands over the last couple of years. Philippa is listening in and saying that I'm sure being in the police would help with teaching. So I'm sure you have
It probably did in previous schools. Here, to be honest, thank God, no, we're okay.
We're very blessed actually in the UAE schools, which like behaviour is a different ball game to in UK schools. I used to teach in East London, in inner city Birmingham, and it was just different culture.
Yesterday we had our final day with Year 11 yesterday, and we did the usual, final assemblies and whatever. It was great fun. Kids are amazing. It's our first cohort through. There's only 29 of them, so we know them all inside out and back to front. And we did a bit of an awards ceremony, and they decided to turn the tables, and they did an awards ceremony on us. So I won the award for the person most likely to be found working undercover for the FBI. So that's my new claim to fame.
Your next job title?
I don't think so.
Osmo has also said that he is in a responsive classroom school for 5 years. Oh, we being in a responsive classroom school for 5 years, it's been the best thing my school has done to create a positive culture. That's really interesting. Do you know anything about responsive class? I don't actually know. I'm talking about that.
I don't know what it means. No, it's not a phrase that I've heard used. Maybe Osama can actually tell us what that means, being a responsive classroom school.
And also he said that schools should invest on SEL more than academic, which is something that I've actually seen like coming up in the last 12 months as well. So social emotional learning.
We're talking about our children there. I mean, it's interesting. As I said, Year 11 finished yesterday, but actually they all come back on Sunday. So it's a bit of a contradiction in terms. And we're doing a 5-week bridging course. And as part of that bridging course, my new head of sixth form, Steve Oakes, he's quite a globally renowned author who's written a series of books called The A-Level Mindset and the GCSE Mindset. And he's got a program called Vespa. And Vespa's used by quite a few schools. His program is used by quite a few schools actually in the Middle East. But Steve, fortunately, has now come on my team as my new head of sixth form. So one of the things that we're doing over the next 5 weeks is, we're starting the EPQ, which is the extended project with kids. We're doing a lot of work on the Vespa and on that growth mindset, and so that preparedness to start those post-16 courses. We're doing a 2-day mental health course where all of the students have been trained as team-to-team mental health leaders, so they can support other students across the school. We're doing 2 days of a virtual career experience where we're connecting them with business and industry, and then they have to go off and do a project and then present it back to the industry the following day. So we're trying to actually focus not on the academics, but very much on developing the social skills so that young people have the voice and the confidence to use their voice and not to be afraid to use it. The emotional literacy in terms of that mental health awareness so that they can coach and mentor and help other people as well as themselves. But that whole idea through Vespa of the vision and understanding who you are and where it is that you want to get to and empowering them with the skills for the future. So I completely agree that whole social emotional literacy piece, however it might look in your school, is crucial for the development of young people, but also for the staff who are then engaged and involved in it. It's a great thing to be involved in.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be like more in like integrated into our socio-emotional learning at our school, because I know it's a very exciting development that we've I guess like it's always been there, but like now people are becoming a bit more aware of like, you know, it needs to be like properly like invested in and developed. And what you're doing is so inspirational. Like at Heartlands, like your team is like, you know, what your whole team is doing is so inspirational at Heartlands to develop that. Vicky, would you like to do some shout outs? Or
well, I'll pull out Philippa's question, because I think it's some of the meat of what we do at We Edu, or not the meat, but it would, well, personally curious, and as a group I think it would be curious. But so if we are a group that is looking at empowering women in education, can you talk about some of the differences that you might experience between being a female leader versus male leadership, and what you see the differences are, and maybe that might be mistakes that you see women making and mistakes that you see men making as well. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts.
Look, there's two sides of the coin. I'm a great believer that great leaders are great leaders, and it doesn't really matter whether you're a man or a woman. And there are incredible leaders in both sectors. So I'm not sure it's about whether you are a man or a woman, but I do think that there are differences sometimes. I think that, you know, on my priority list, one of the things that might be higher than it is for some male leaders is empathy. I'm not saying it's necessarily the top tool, but I think that's really important. I think knowing yourself, I think knowing your own beliefs, your own values, and who you are, and what's integral to you as a human being. I think perhaps women sometimes do convey that message a little bit more with an authenticity. And why is that? I think because I do think it's different. I do think it's harder. I do think it's harder to rise up sometimes as a female leader, but that's not an excuse. It's just a different type of journey, isn't it? So if you're a female leader, just have confidence in your beliefs, in who you are, in your mantra, and you will rise. So it's no more difficult. But I do think if I look even around this city, in terms of female leaders, particularly in secondary schools or all through schools, there perhaps aren't as many.
Yeah.
And some of that is actually our own fault, because sometimes we're not very good at putting ourselves forward for things. So there's this whole self-demonizing thing, isn't there? You know, I'm not good enough. So there's this self-deprecation that I think women are very good at doing, which is, you know, well, I'm almost like imposter syndrome, you know, waiting to be found out that you're not actually as good as you think you are. So I think we just have to get over that, and we have to say to ourselves, actually, you know, that's not true. Whether you're a man or a woman, if you have those skills, which are listening, I think listening to people, genuinely caring about people, about the people that you work with, and not just saying that, but walking the talk in relation to doing that. And that doesn't mean you're perfect. It's just where you put those priorities. When I say that my door is open, my door genuinely is open, not just physically and metaphorically, but my door is open. And if I had staff who feel they can't come to me, there may be some. But a good example, I think, of an open school and the culture that you create is we had a new head of secondary who's just joined us, James McBlain, who's just joined us in BZAC, where he's been for the last 14 years. And James decided that one of the first things to do was to talk to all of the secondary staff members individually so he could get to know them. And he sort of asked them, you know, what's great about the school and what could we improve? Right? What could we make better? And he came back and he fed back to the senior leadership team what people had said. And the most powerful thing we took away from it, which we verbally said at the end of the session, was that even where people were critical and said, well, I think this could improve, and this could improve, the very fact that they had the courage and felt it was okay to say it said more about our school than the great things we did or the bad things we did. Yeah. The fact that people felt safe, that it was okay to say, well, I think you could do this a lot better, actually, and I haven't been too happy with that. That's the most powerful thing that we can have. And I think that all leaders can create that, whether they're men or they're women. But sometimes perhaps I feel, certainly I believe that I articulate that better than some people I've worked with before. Yes, I do.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, one of the reasons that one of the reasons I was very interested in hearing your story on this platform after we first spoke was about your genuine interest and genuine concern when you are talking about staff who are leaving your school. I mean, even before the chat, you were able to talk about, exactly where they're all going, why they're leaving. And the impression that I get is that that's not always the case, is that, teachers don't sign their contracts, they leave their schools, and then, sometimes leadership sort of don't even, sort of flick through the names, and that's about as far as they get in some cases. I think that there is a strong case that there is a female element to that, of this empathy, and actually a couple of the comments here are talking about empathy is such a big part of that. And I think talking about, you talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, as well as an amazing book, which is How Women Rise, and they talk a lot about. They did a survey where they talked about women applying for jobs and men applying for jobs, and there might be 10 bullet points of what you need for this job. Men will apply if 3 of them apply to them, and women will apply. They have to wait until 7 kind of hit the mark for them. So there is that kind of holding ourselves back, and I think it is for some women anyway, that maybe they feel like they really have to have achieved everything required before they can even kind of take the leap. So that's really,
and do you know, the converse of the other side of that really is that sometimes then, because it's been harder maybe for the woman to get to where she's got to, I think sometimes women then think that they have to be, bulls in china shops. They have to be so strong, and they have to be so, determined and so whatever. And actually, that isn't necessarily what's needed. There was a really interesting piece of research that was done by the Ethical Leadership Commission, which one of the teacher unions, ASCL, in the UK, actually commissioned. It's about 3 or 4 years old. And they found that strong and robust leadership was actually less important than wise and just leadership. And I think, that making sure that wise doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It just means that when you have made mistakes, and then you know how to apologize, doesn't it? Wise can be listening to people and make sure you take all stakeholders' voices into account. Wise can sometimes just be making the decision because you need to, but the just part is the really important. It's being seen to, being perceived to be fair in terms of how you do things, and at least explaining to people why you do the things that you do. Some of the feedback I've had from staff in relation to how we managed some of the challenges that we faced during COVID was literally the transparency, that we didn't try to pretend anything other than where we were. And when we were going through challenges as a school community, I was honest and open and transparent with the team about those challenges, which meant that we all supported each other even more. As opposed to being critical, we actually all stayed on the bus together and said, we're going to get through this. So I think that honesty and integrity is more important sometimes than anything.
And actually, you said there's probably maybe a bit cliched as well, if I put this the wrong way, but about knowing when you've made a mistake and when to apologise, like how and when to apologise is important. And I'm actually, this is all, I'm thinking of my husband now, so it gets a bit personal. The cliche of like maybe men not really being. Sorry doesn't come easily necessarily to the husbands in our lives potentially, which I think is hit a personal note there. I wondered if that translates as well into.
I hope he's not in the next room, Victoria. But best of luck with that.
He's been the best husband ever, and he's taken the kids out for a morning of fun. So I can't complain today.
I often use this quote. There's a woman called Susan Desmond Hallam, and she was the first CEO that Bill Gates appointed to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which thankfully they are going to continue, even though that they're going their separate ways. But Susan Desmond Hallam has actually left the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She left last March and is now one of the CEO directors of Pfizer. Talk about good timing and making a move like that. But she's not a name that's very well known, and yet she's somebody who is globally at the very, very top of her game. And when she was asked about sort of what were her traits in relation to leadership, she came up with 3 words, and I'll just pull them up. Her words were emotion, so understanding your emotion and the emotions of others, being able to demonstrate your own personal vulnerability. She said that was really, really important. and also having resilience. Now, there were her three, and I listened to her three, and I think, gosh, yes, you know, if that can be my mantra, I'd be really happy with that. So emotion, vulnerability, and resilience doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that your strength is displayed in a different way. So to all the ladies who are listening this morning, you know, don't give up and just have faith, really, and go for it.
I think that's really difficult. I mean, like for men and women also to kind of like show socially what we perceive as weakness is to say sorry, is to kind of like is to maybe take someone else's ideas. But like, you know, in the long term for a leader, more and more you're recognizing that like if you say something and someone else is saying like, you know, has this great idea, the best thing you can do for your company, school, business is to take that person on board and make them feel valued, because you're leading them, like, and you're kind of like giving them that. And that's not a weakness at all. Like, you know, that's making your business strong, and therefore making, you know, your position, your team stronger as well. Like, and that's so important. Neil, as always, like, yeah, with your wife nodding along, and the wise and just leadership. Like, I found that to be like a really interesting, I guess, a mantra which like I could be like taking on board as well. Like, you know, to be just and to be integral. Like, you know, to be integral is to be integral to yourself. To be just is to be like, you know, is to have integrity within your team.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think that leadership is a bit of a game, and it's not really. It's the most important thing that we do, and I often talk about the fact that, you know, leadership is a real privilege, but with that privilege comes incredible responsibility. So you have to be honest with yourself that it's not necessarily always an easy job, but gosh, it is an important job. It doesn't mean it's more important than anything else in the school, but it has the responsibility. The buck does stop with you. So therefore, you know, you have to take on the responsibility of the task. And therefore you have to work hard at it. You can't just sit and procrastinate. You have to make sure that you continue to research, continue to develop, and to continue to grow. You know, one of the things that I've just started in February of this year is I've just started a 10-month course on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because again, you know, do we make mistakes? Do we really listen to our community, particularly in a culture like this, you know, particularly in a culture where we have so many different nationalities, so many different faiths, so many different just nuances to who we are as people. So it's really important that we, even as leaders, we continue to grow and develop, and we don't just sit back and think, well, just because I've been doing it for 10, 15 years, then I'm okay and I know everything. I think the world is changing. It's incumbent on us to keep reading, to keep researching, to keep at the top of our game the whole time. And I often compare it to, you know, if I was going to a doctor or a lawyer, let's take a doctor, for example, you know, and I needed surgery. If that doctor or surgeon hadn't kept at the top of his game, then he would be slicing me open and I'd have a 6-week recovery period, as opposed to keyhole surgery, and I'll be in and out of hospital in less than 24 hours and back on my feet in 2 days. Now, which doctor do you want to go to? Well, you want to go to the one that's keeping ahead of the game, the one who's keeping up with latest research and innovation and development. So it's incumbent on us in schools to actually do the same. It's important that leaders keep ahead of the game as well in terms of what they're looking at and what they're doing.
I think, yeah, a really important point to that is actually like once you go into a position of leadership, inevitably like your teaching load will go down, like your contact periods will go down. So therefore it becomes like really easy, and it's one of my fears actually. Like it becomes very easy to kind of like become very disassociated with the classroom, and therefore the profession that you're actually trying to help and the profession that you're trying to lead. And it is all about research. Like I the amount of like reading that I've done this year just to kind of keep abreast of like what's going on, like in the interests that I have, just so that I can like pass that on. It's yeah. I keep saying it's really important, but it's just like it's
yeah. What you've just said there is really important, Linda, because it's about the amount of reading that you've done so that you can pass on. I'm lucky that I live in a school, and I do live in the school most of the time. I live in a school where I've got people around me who are also forward thinking, you know, because they're looking for the next step on their ladder and the next thing that they're interested in doing, and they want to be creative and inventive. So they are reading as well, and they're looking at research. And there's sometimes, you know, they're connecting with groups like your group here, you know, and they're listening to other people talk in conferences. And every time we listen to somebody else, we learn something. So I think that's really important, to keep learning all the time, but to keep listening is actually twice as important. Be a better listener than you are a speaker.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, that's what we use in the sales world as well. 2 ears, 1 mouth, and all that. If we're talking a little bit about why people leave schools and what helps staff stay or leave, so what advice do you have for someone who is considering a move? What advice do you have for them to think about before? And then in turn, if you can tell us about how your advice for people and how they approach that conversation with their leadership team.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got 10 people out of 84. I've got 10 leaving this year, which is a bigger number than perhaps I might like. I look at it on an individual basis, and all of those people who are leaving, I've had conversations with when they were making their decision. Not just after they've made their decision, but when they were making their decision.
Yeah.
I've actually got 2 who are moving to other Dubai schools, one on a promotion, which is absolutely the right thing for them, and I'm delighted for them. And the second person is leaving for a sideways step, but to another great school and for a different opportunity that hopefully something will also happen for them. The other 8, interestingly, are all going home. Not going home necessarily because of COVID, but I would say that it's had a 60 to 70% influence on their decision this year to go home. Half of those going home, of those 8, have not got jobs yet for September. But they've made the decision that they're packing their bags, they've been in Dubai, they've done their time, and they're going. What advice do I give them? I'm thinking of one person who's going and who hasn't got a job yet. It's to make sure you find the right job for you culturally, the place that you're going to fit in, the place that you're going to be valued and respected. It's easy just to take a job because you want to move on. But there's very little point in moving from the frying pan into the fire the whole time and making wrong decisions just because you're in a rush to move on. So make sure that you do your research. Make sure that you do think through the values in the school and who the school is and what the school believes in. Talk to people who work there at the moment if you possibly can, particularly if you're looking at a UAE school. I've got 17 staff joining me in September because we are expanding. And of those 17, 10 of them are coming from UAE schools. So, they've all had the opportunity to speak to people who work here already, and they've done their research. And when they come into interview, they've spoken to somebody because they'll say, "Oh, I heard you were doing this," and I'm thinking, "How'd you know that?" And that's great. That's as it should be. So do your research, speak to other people who work there, but make sure fundamentally that the school that you're moving to, you're not just moving as an excuse to get out of where you are, but you're moving to somewhere that is actually genuinely going to be better for you as a human being, somewhere where you're going to be valued, where you can grow, where there's capacity for your development, and where people are going to look after you, actually. So, back to that sense of community. Definitely talk to the heads, though. I've the 2 people who are leaving to move to Dubai schools, I mean, I did everything I could to keep them. We sat in this room and we had those conversations, but their reasons for leaving and moving are the right reasons. So they have our full support, and we will send them on that journey, indebted to them for the contribution that they've made here and full of absolute, delight for them in the next step. I always say the people who leave you, they're your biggest advocates, because if the people who leave your school do nothing but criticize what they've left, you're in trouble. Because you're only as good as the people that maybe are, not as happy as they might be and have chosen to leave you. So that's what's most important. That reputation precedes you, really. But talk to the team, talk to somebody in the school if you're uncertain. Don't just jump out because you don't know what to do, but put culture first before anything.
Have you got any staff joining you immediately from their home countries as well? And this is their first move into Dubai.
Yeah. Well, again, We do what other schools do. I think we're all quite good at this. You know, we do the buddy systems, and we do the Facebook groups, and we have the constant communication to update them. We team them up with people, and now with Zoom, you know, there's no excuse not to have meetings where you can pull people together and connect them before they actually come here. And then when they do get here, you take care of them. And where did that come from for me? It was as a 22-year-old going to England to teach for the first time with my suitcases. I had the job with my cases and with nowhere to stay. The school had said they'd sort it out. And I found myself still sitting in the school at 5 o'clock that day, not knowing where I was going to sleep. And my luggage was in the hold at the train station. And I remember just being destitute, absolutely destitute. Not only did I not want to leave Ireland at the time and go to the UK to teach, there just weren't any teaching jobs in Ireland, and hence I made the move. But not only did I not want to go, but I felt so lost and so alone. And I was just lucky that I was actually taken in or put in with a former retired deputy head of the school, a wonderful couple. And they took care of me for the first 2 months, really. They treated me like a daughter or a granddaughter. And they took care of me for 2 months. It was the best thing that could have happened. But yeah, take care of people. Take care of people, and the rest will take care of itself.
It's so interesting what you said about it being like the advocates of the school, because if you do all of that, and like you would hope that, like, you know, school leaders do, you know, predominantly take care and empathize and listen to and make your teachers feel valued, and essentially you're developing those teachers like as much as you're developing the students. So when they do go, like you say, that students will go off to university and that's your reputation, but teachers will go over to the schools. Sometimes in the country, like in the same country, sometimes in other countries, talk about your school, and not only do you have that option to kind of like build that bridge and like learn from that, continue to learn from that teacher, but like they may then like give you a new teacher or a new contact, you know, you can continue to grow your school with. Like it just makes so much sense. Right?
But I do think it's equally as important, you know, if you're in a toxic environment and it's somewhere that you don't feel valued and somewhere that you don't feel is really listening to you and taking care of you as an individual, then leave. Because, you know, so much of our time is taken up at work. You can't just plow through and say, well, it's just work, I'll get through it and it'll be okay. Because it influences and impacts on every part of your life. I genuinely, you know, there hasn't been a day that I haven't looked forward to coming to school. And that's really, really important for me. Actually, in every school I've been in, I've never worked anywhere where I've dreaded coming to work. And I've worked with great leaders who've been my heads in the past. All men, by the way. I've never worked for a female leader. So all my head teachers in the past have always been men. But I've learned so much from them, and I've also learned what not to be from them, believe it or not. So sometimes you learn what not to do and how to be better by looking at the mistakes other people around you make. But if you're unhappy where you're working, if it's making you unhappy, then it's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health. It's not good for your family, because you'll bring those anxieties home. There are great schools and better places for you to be, and you will find that position. So get out.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it does. It changes you as a person. Like, you know, like being in an environment that, like, you know, for that long each day when you're not feeling valued, or there's something not quite right there, it does change your outlook for your whole entire life, and you know, it changes the personality. So it is so important to move on, as you say, to move on with integrity, you know, to move on, not.
Yeah, but I also think that, you know, I have to say we make mistakes. So sometimes, you know, there could well be a teacher in my school who doesn't feel that they've been valued. What's really important is that they can tell somebody that, and we'll fix that, we'll rectify it. Because sometimes we get so caught up in our busy lives, don't we, in doing things that we might forget sometimes to stop and say, you know, hi, you know, how are you today? Is everything okay? Oh my gosh, I didn't realize you felt like that. So talking is really key. Listening, as we said, Victoria, is absolutely crucial. But making sure that you've got people who are almost your pressure points throughout the school, who will come and let you know when things aren't okay. That's really important as a leader as well. Your staff wellbeing group, which might seem frivolous because they're organising breakfast or they're organising an event. It's absolutely important to the heart and soul of the school, and don't underestimate those little moments of kindness where somebody puts something on your desk to make you feel better, or makes you a cup of coffee, or buys you a croissant, or does whatever just to make you feel good that day. Those frivolous things that might seem superficial actually can really make somebody's day. So taking care of each other is important, and listening.
And those groups also give you an opportunity to notice when something's wrong, right? So that's right. If when you have a huge staff, to care about, to think about, to be conscious of it at all these times. If you have those people who are looking out and say, "Oh, well, I can see that something's not quite right with this person, or she's not on top form, or something's upsetting her," to have that opportunity to spot those issues as well. In the same way that you would with your students, right? You would look at your students in the same way. You would notice when something's changed.
Yeah.
I've learned so much, and it's been amazing being able to talk to both of you today, because the conversation has gone in many different directions, but it's always to the same core values of you've got to be integral, in whatever position you're in. You've got to listen to the people around you in whatever position you're in, and you've got to the most important thing actually is mistakes aren't weaknesses. And mistakes everyone can learn from, and to be bold and to be a good leader is to show those mistakes, to kind of own them almost. And with that, your culture of your school is all the culture of your business is always growing. I've really learned.
But staff retention, and recruitment and taking care of staff is really important. And as we said, helping people on all parts of their journey is really important. But acknowledging sometimes that we don't get it right, that integrity does make a difference as well. Final thing from me really is I think our values drive who we are. Our values have to be our moral compass in terms of how we operate and what we do. It doesn't mean we're superhuman, although at times we might feel we are, all of us, I think you're superhuman. When I go down to FS, I think they're superhuman. They've got 20 people at the age of 4 in their classroom, and it's terrifying. I think they're the most amazing teachers that I've come to grow and learn and respect. And I'm a secondary specialist, but a day in FS changes your life forever. They are superhuman. But, it's superhuman teaching somebody how to write and to read. It's superhuman teaching somebody a new language or a musical instrument or the next piece of art. And that happens the whole way through the school. And I'm indebted and really privileged to work with the people that I work with here. My teachers are genuinely superhuman because they're making those differences every day, as are teachers all across the city. So I think hang true to your values, because that dictates who you become as a teacher, as a leader, as a practitioner. Make sure you're in the right place. Make sure that you're happy. We're all about making sure children are happy, but gosh, make sure you as an adult are really, really happy as well. And take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Beautiful last words there. Thank you. And we'll see you all again next time.
Take care. Thanks, ladies. Nice morning.